Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the finale of Game of Thrones discussion. And I do mean the finale. This is the season finale as well as the series finale for Game of Thrones, season 8, episode 6. We are going to be talking pretty much everything that happened in this episode and maybe even touching on stuff that happened throughout the series as well. But that being said, I don't want to keep talking and droning on. John, tell us all how you felt about the season/series finale.
You know, brother, watching it with my family, which I think it's always better to watch with other people because maybe it makes you more amicable to what you see. Um, there were things I really liked about it, and things like I was just kind of flummoxed by, like why did they go this route, and just plain didn't like. So on the whole, if I was to give it a score, I'd give this finale probably like a 6 out of 10. If I'm being honest, like it was okay, like barely crossing that halfway mark into more like passing territory. But yeah, there were just some things that I just really didn't care for. How about you though, man? How'd you feel?
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag for me. There was some stuff in this episode that I loved, but there was also a lot of stuff that annoyed me that kind of played off of stuff that annoyed me in episode 5, which I don't think 5 will go down as the worst series or the worst episode in series history, but it's like bottom 5 for sure. So yeah, if you want to, we can just get right into the episode.
Absolutely, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, so we do start things off seeing Tyrion walk through this like ashy city, and he sees a dead child, all kinds of death and destruction. Jon offers to send someone with him to talk to Daenerys, but he decides he's going alone. We see Grey Worm sentencing a bunch of Lannister soldiers to death when Jon shows up to try and reason with him. But he does say he got orders to kill all men who follow Cersei, and that's what he's doing from Daenerys. So I guess before we move on here, this is important because it does kind of prove my theory last week that Daenerys was the one who kind of informed Grey Worm's decision last week to go on the offensive and start killing Lannister soldiers, even though they had laid down their arms. So that kind of, makes me feel a little better about that because there was a point, like, I guess one of the fucking writers, I don't even remember his name. One of the writers, though, not DB Weiss, the other one, the one that does
David Binoff, or however you pronounce his last name.
It's David something. I don't think that's how you pronounce his name, but it's something.
No, I don't think that's how you pronounce it either. But that's just like the gist.
But yeah. But yeah, he does like the inside the game or inside the thrones or whatever it is series, and he was saying about how Daenerys, when she saw the Red Keep, that triggered something inside her and that she made the decision to burn the city down like on a whim. I didn't buy that. I think that's fucking stupid. And frankly, they contradicted their own shit because he said that last week. And now this week we're finding out, oh, by the way, she told Grey Worm to kill all men who follow Cersei. So that was like, it's like he's contradicting himself because last week he said, oh, it was a split second decision and Grey Worm was just going along with it. But now we know, like, no, she told Grey Worm to do that. And she even said, like, there was a point in last week's episode where Daenerys told Grey Worm, watch for my signal, you'll know when to start. And then that was when she, like, that like led to the point where she started burning shit to the ground. And that was like Grey Worm's signal to start killing people. Like, this was planned. And I fucking hate that one of the goddamn writers of the show said last week that it was a split second decision because your own writing proves otherwise, you fucking jackass.
Yeah, I feel like to say it was a split decision is a major disservice to the character, which, believe me, there have been plenty of think pieces floating around on the internet about like what Game of Thrones got wrong about Daenerys Targaryen and how they did wrong by the Daenerys Targaryen character. But she's never been one for me to like make snap judgments, at least not always. I mean, yeah, she can be stubborn and obstinate, but a snap decision on that scale, like fucking a slaughter, that just makes the character look terrible. So now, like when you retroactively correct it, through the writing and say, oh, it was part of a grander strategic plan. She advised her military, to do that. It doesn't make it any less like abominable for the character, but I think it does fit more in line with how they do things and how they conduct themselves. So that's good at least. But yeah, I agree with you. Like a way to out yourself when you're a fucking writer of this show. That's some bullshit.
Yeah. So then we see Tyrion and we kind of follow him through the map room, and he eventually finds a torch and heads downstairs because, he might not, Cersei might not have been his biggest fan, and he might not have been the biggest fan of Cersei, but he still knows how she thinks, and he knows that if she felt like she was losing this battle, if she felt like she was in danger, she would head down to the basement, which is like the room that had like the dragon skeletons and shit in it. So he kind of goes down there. He finds this big old like collapsed piece, like there's so many rocks just blocking the entrance. But because he's small, he's able to kind of climb up, remove a few rocks, and get through. And eventually, he's kind of looking through the wreckage, and he sees Jaime's prosthetic hand. So we see him clear off some of the rubble, and eventually, he does find Cersei and Jaime. So really tragic moment here. Tyrion is just devastated. He's sobbing. And yeah, just it's in this moment, Tyrion was the rest of the fan base when we realized how horribly the Jaime Lannister character was betrayed by his own writers.
Yeah, absolutely. I still can't forgive them for undoing all of his progress and character growth, only to die in rubble with Cersei, who I still feel like got off too easy, given everything she did. But the big thing here is that Tyrion is the last Lannister. The last Lannister standing. Tywin's dead. Their mother died in childbirth, giving birth to Tyrion. And now Jaime and Cersei are dead. So,
yeah,
heavy shit.
Tyrion is the last Lannister.
Yes, that's huge because he's also the only one that really had like a mind for peace and like wanted things to be better. Not that Jaime wasn't softening in that direction, but I mean, you can see how that turned out. Yeah. So, yeah, very interesting.
Man, all right. So after this, we see Arya no longer on the horse, which like, it's like, what the hell are the writers doing here? Like, the last image that we saw in episode 5 was Arya riding out of King's Landing on a white horse. And the first time we see her in this episode, she's still in King's Landing and no longer on a horse. What the fuck was the whole point of that final episode? Like, she didn't even kill anyone in this episode. And the whole thing was like, oh, death rides on a pale horse. Nothing comes of that. I fucking hate when that shit happens. You're not supposed to tease something if you're not going to do something with it.
Yeah, I know Chekhov's horse isn't exactly appropriate here, but given the symbolism it was conveying, like a whole lot of nothing.
Literally nothing. Like I said, she didn't kill anyone here.
Yeah, that's the thing. For all the death and mayhem we got in like the preceding 2 episodes, like very little of it was committed by Arya. Like literally, I think her only kill was the Night King. And like they really mellowed her out in this last season, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but I would like it to feel more earned. Like, I feel like throughout the whole show, we've really grown with her as, like, this Avenger. She lost her mother. She lost her father. She pretty much lost her family pride. Like, I mean, there were still surviving Starks, but they had been so displaced amongst, the 7 kingdoms and amongst, like, all the power and goings on and everything that, like, they were an afterthought. They were a family, that was to be mourned for how much they had lost. And Arya had made her list, and she was working through it, and that was part of her character growth. And I like the idea. I actually think it's a fascinating idea of like Arya going so far back, you question if she can find her humanity again, and she does. But like, that's why, honestly, I kind of hated the episode structure for these last 2 seasons. Because like, I feel like they should have given themselves more time to explore that. Because to me, and I'm just one fan among millions, although I don't know after this how many there are left. But, I feel like you have to earn arcs like that. I feel like you have to earn moments like that, which this show did on some level. Like, Theon, I stand by that. I feel like Theon had an amazing arc, and he gave his life to protect the same family that at one time he betrayed, but they had time to build that story. You saw the torture by Ramsay Bolton. You saw the remorse in Theon and the little things he would do, like the light in his eyes that would show that Theon was still there and it wasn't just Reek, like when he saved Sansa. They had time to build that and really show you the arc develop. Literally in one episode, Arya does a 180 because she's totally committed to killing Cersei in episode 5. And then the Hound's like, oh, look in my eyes. There's no life in my eye. You want to be like me. And then that's enough to reach her, which again, I get on one level, it's the bond with the Hound. But she was really deeply entrenched in this idea of vengeance. And you don't pull yourself away from the muck that easily. Like, I'm sorry, television or not, there's only so many things you can do with the medium. Because we use the term in wrestling, right? Suspension of disbelief. Like, I'll suspend my disbelief for dragons and political warfare and this and that. But for Arya to make that kind of decision, and then all this time later, like regain her humanity, and then the ending that she got, which again, on some level makes sense, but it just doesn't feel earned. And like that was really my big problem with everything Arya did these last 2 episodes. It's like you take us on this whole journey and then you just abruptly decide to get off the roller coaster. And I feel a bit cheated, honestly. I feel a bit cheated. So that's all I want to say.
Well, dude, that's basically how I felt at the end of episode 3 when Arya was the one that killed the Night King. Because I almost feel like the writers were just like, oh, we don't want to have one person get more than one big kill, which is why they didn't want to have Arya also kill Cersei because she killed the fucking Night King. But then, like, to me, the way that, like, if you have that obstacle as a writer that like you don't want to have anybody get more than one big kill, Jon Snow kills the Night King, Jaime Lannister kills his fucking sister, and then you leave it open-ended so people can like speculate, oh, was it really Jaime or was it Arya with Jaime's face or whatever? Because you could have fucking Euron kill Jaime in their battle and then he doesn't survive like he did, and then he just dies in rubble anyway. And then Arya like definitively should have been the one to kill Daenerys, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I mean, not to jump the gun here, but like the way that Daenerys dies, like I would have accepted that as Cersei's death. Again, like I feel like
with Jaime, that would have been perfect.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I could think about, when that happened was like that should have been Cersei and that should have been Jaime in Jon's place. And like
there was so much tension at the early on in this episode with that big step scene because like Daenerys was just out there and Arya was staring at her, and I was like, girl, you want to get the job done. And she just so angry about it.
Yeah, no, and that's another thing too. Like, it's one thing given Arya's arc and her character and everything else to like assume that it's going to happen and then it doesn't happen. Like, that's still grounds enough to me for sour grapes. But when the show itself goes out of the way to tease it by seeing Arya looking at this speech taking place where Daenerys is like, yeah, what we did to the Red Keep, we're going to do it all over the world, baby. And like, the Unsullied so excited. When you panned Arya's face and that concern, like, this bitch needs to be stopped. And then you don't have her do it, which granted, maybe in the show's defense, it always seemed like everybody was putting pressure on Jon to make the decision. So maybe it was always Jon's decision to make. But I don't know. I feel like they knew what they were doing when they panned the camera to Arya and then it led to nothing because they know what we're going to think. They know the logical puzzle that we're going to put together seeing that. And it just amounted to nothing. Like, and again, this really disappoints me because my 2 favorite characters throughout the whole series, Arya and Tyrion. And I feel like they both, I mean, Tyrion kind of redeemed himself in this finale, which we'll get to, but I feel like they both did more or less fuck all. Like these last few episodes, like, yeah, Arya slayed the Night King, but even that, like, you've heard plenty of people talk about how the Battle of Winterfell could have been done better. And it's just, it's really a shame that both those characters went out that way, and that's how their arcs concluded. But whatever.
Yeah, and by the way, Paul, I do want to say all of the bitching is going to be about the first half of the episode because I think John and I both felt much better about the latter half of the episode.
Yeah, I would say so. And even so, Paul, if you're not in for that negativity, I'm not going to blame you or hold it against you, but we can't lie about how we feel. I'm not going to lie about how I feel.
Right. And well, this is also like, it's like, 70% season 8, episode 6 review, 30% series discussion, review, recap, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We're also like, it's the last episodes. Like, we're also kind of talking about the series in general and how like weirdly disappointing the last few episodes of the final season were. Cause like, I think you and I both enjoyed episodes 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like episodes 3 and 5 were bad to awful. And episode 6 was a mixed bag.
Yeah. I would agree with that completely, actually.
So yeah, but really, I think that as far as Arya goes, my biggest issue is that they had that big tease last episode. Like, oh, she gets up on the white horse. There's this whole thing with the white horse represents death. She literally leaves King's Landing, or we see her going towards the exit of King's Landing. And then in this episode, it's like that scene never even happened because she's just back in King's Landing. There's no like all the horses are with the Dothraki. So yeah, that's what frustrates me. But she does see Jon and she sees Jon walking towards the steps, and there's a big old dragon banner, like the Targaryen sigil hanging up next to the steps. Grey Worm is at the top, and then Dany ends up being at the top as well. She kind of walks up to the top of the steps from behind. We get a speech She praises everyone in her army, names Grey Worm commander of all of her forces, the Queen's master of war, tells the Unsullied that they have liberated the people of King's Landing from a tyrant and that she wants to liberate people everywhere in the world. And this is where, again, we get like a distant look at Arya, who's glaring holes through Daenerys, but again, we never get any kind of follow-up on that. And then we see Tyrion walk up beside Daenerys. She says to him, you freed your brother. And he says, yes, I did. And then he brings up that she, burnt a city to the ground. And then he removes the hand of the king, or hand of the queen, in this case, pendant, and literally just tosses it down the steps. And then she tells her soldiers to take him and leaves with them. So this whole thing is just setting up that Tyrion is now a prisoner. She told him last episode, next time you fail me will be the last time you fail me. He freed his brother because, fucking mercy. And she burned the fucking city to the ground, and he's pissed at her. So that's the whole situation here.
Yeah. I mean, good for Tyrion for finally seeing clearly, and like some of his speeches, like later in the episode, I actually really liked.
Yeah, he had two big ones that were really good for sure.
Yeah, and good for him for standing up to Daenerys. Throwing the pendant down was a nice visual touch. I like too how the Unsullied, like, they see it, and the moment that pendant hits the ground, like, their spears just stop.
Yep.
Kind of stomping. And
they did a really good job of kind of showing like the progression too, because like it was like stomp, and then you saw like one or two people stop because they were the ones that saw it first, and then progressively the stopping gets quieter, and then it just stops.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was really nicely done. Again, visually and just everything else. Whoever like works on the visuals and everything, they killed it again, because you really see the scope of the military.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we'll consistently give this series credit, is that it is fucking gorgeous aesthetically.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. So Daenerys saying to the guards, like, take Tyrion. I'm surprised she didn't like kill him on the spot or something. Like, it just made me think, like, he's been in prison.
Yeah, because she basically did that with Varys. So why is she treating that? Like, I had questions about that too, because like even with Jon, like Jon is even more of an exception, because like this dude just killed your queen, and you're still gonna just keep him prisoner for a while until you like. I feel like Grey Worm is the type of person who, as soon as he found out Jon killed the queen, he would fucking kill him on the spot, or at least tried to. You know what
right?
I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But somehow he ended up in a cell, and without, I don't know who made that call. We don't know, because we had a fucking time jump. So that's frustrating too. But anyway, we see this whole situation, and Tyrion's pissed, but he gets taken. Arya came to kill. She ends up at the top of the stairs next to Jon, and she tells him that she came to kill Cersei, but Daenerys got to her first. And she actually says, not Daenerys, but your queen got to her first. And Jon's just like, oh, she's everyone's queen now. And it's like, yeah, try telling that to Sansa. And Jon tells her to wait for him outside the city gates, and she tells him that he will always be a threat to Daenerys. And Arya says, from her experience, she knows a killer when she sees one. So Arya kind of planting the seed that like Jon is basically never going to be safe, because Daenerys sees him as a threat and is willing to kill just because she doesn't agree with something, or because she sees you as a threat in this case. So anything you wanted to say about the little conversation there between Jon and Arya?
No, I really liked it. Again, it's his family kind of looking out for him, and more or less is like, hey, it's either got or get got, like either you kill her first and end this tyranny, or it won't be long before she kills you too, because she sees you as a threat. And Arya, I feel like, has always kept it real with Jon, because I'm not saying Sansa hasn't, but I also feel like with Sansa there was like a tinge of opportunism there. With Arya, I really do feel like it comes from a place of like pure love, like wanting to keep Jon safe, and she's just letting him know, like, she is gonna kill you, like this isn't gonna last. So I really did appreciate like Arya getting the word in. But again, though, like for the Arya character, like it's one thing for her to be like kind and stuff to Jon. That's totally consistent. That's my problem. But again, to like urge Jon, did you just like take a vow of like abstinence from murder or something? Like she didn't really seem like fired up or motivated to like take care of it herself, which I thought she would. But yeah, it was just all like laying on Jon, which again, from a character standpoint, and I gotta be honest, like to pin your hopes on this guy because they keep saying it like, oh, he's so good, he's so just, but we don't. I'm not saying like we've never seen it, but if you look at like recent history, because you know that adage, what have you done for me lately? The dude's kind of a spineless jellyfish. And now, sure, like the writing in the universe, like he does come through, and we'll get to that.
That's again, though, that's like a recent development. Like this is the same dude that fucking stood up to Mance Rayder. Like this is the dude that fucking had the balls to tell the Night's Watch, you know what? We're bringing the wildlings down past the wall. We're gonna save their lives. Like this dude had courage before. I don't even know. I don't know what happened to him. Like something just before he met Daenerys, I guess you could say. Because like it's like ever since he's been with her, he's been this spineless jellyfish that you were just talking about. But before that, he was a courageous dude, and like he's still got courage selectively. He's just a total wimp when it comes to standing up to her and her bullshit.
And I feel like the characters themselves even say that, like, oh, it's Daenerys that kind of has this hold on you. It's Daenerys that's brought about this change in you, this stubbornness in you. But see, again, though, I feel like my qualm still has legs, because if in your own universe your characters are aware of that, why would you trust him to take care of business? That would be like a show.
I feel like this finale made it seem like the fucking moral of this series is that love is the death of duty.
Yeah. And I don't know how I feel about that being the moral, honestly. That's something I'm gonna have to chew on. I don't think I'll be able to resolve it in the confines of this review. But yeah, like I don't know. If I'm Arya or Sansa or Tyrion, I'm looking at Jon Snow and I'm seeing oh, you're my queen forever and always. And no, she's all of our queen now. I'd be thinking of plan B through Z. Because like to me, again, just from my assumption with those interactions, Jon Snow ain't gonna come through. To me, the idea that he was written to have come through, it really should be chalked up more to luck than anything else, because I really didn't see anything recently in the character that he would fulfill that duty. But, you know, I do give a heavy assist to Tyrion because I think his speech has had a moving effect. But again, we'll get to those. But yeah, I enjoyed the interaction between him and Arya. It's just, man, John, you are a wimp, man.
So then, yeah, like you said, as far as Tyrion's speeches, Jon does go to talk to Tyrion, and Tyrion is very regretful as far as betraying Varys goes. And he says, you know, I wonder, you know, if anyone knows about life after death, it's you. So is there a life after death? And Jon's just like, not that I know of. And Tyrion's just like, oh, oblivion is the best I can hope for. But yeah, Tyrion says he betrayed Daenerys and he would do it again now that he's seen what he's seen. He's convinced that this war isn't over because he even points out to Jon, like, you saw her out there giving that speech. Does that look like a woman who's done fighting to you? Talks about how Varys was right. He gets on Jon and insists, like, you wouldn't have done the same. He asks him, would you have done the same? And he's like, oh, I don't know. And Tyrion gets on him. He's just like, you know you wouldn't have. And, of course, Jon won't admit it. He explains, though, the whole, like, Daenerys point of view, where it's like she's grown, you know, she's her whole life. She's been freeing people, and like he does this great thing too, where it's almost like I feel like Tyrion is like speaking for some fans, because he was like, you know, when she killed slavers, we cheered because they were evil men. When she crucified those people in Meereen, we cheered because they were evil men. It's easy to get behind her when she's doing these things to evil men because, you know, and now she's so convinced that whatever she sees as good is objectively good that, you know, from her perspective, burning down King's Landing was good because as far as she's concerned, she knows what's good and she thought that it was the right thing to do. So that makes it good. And that's like the problem here. And he also says he believed in, he says basically like, I know you love her and I loved her. And then he even says, not as successfully as you, but I did believe in her with all my heart. And then this was the line really that got to me. Not necessarily love is the death of duty, but love is more powerful than reason. That seems to be the moral of the series. Love is more powerful than reason, which I hate, but whatever.
Yeah. Don't really know how I feel about that. I think I would have to chew on that a bit more.
And then, yeah, like Jon does quote Aemon, because Maester Aemon up at the Night's Watch did say love is the death of duty. And then Tyrion says sometimes duty is the death of love. And then Tyrion also brings back the Night's Watch vows. You are the shield that guards the realms of men, and basically tells Jon, you know, you've got to do what's right. And then he also brings up, like, who is the greatest threat to the people right now? Do you think that I'm the last man she'll execute? Who is more dangerous to her than the rightful heir to the Iron Throne? And Jon just kind of backs down at that point, starts walking away, but then Tyrion brings up Sansa and Arya and basically puts it on Jon like, dude, you've got a decision to make and you've got to make it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter Dinklage did fucking great with this scene. This actually won me back a little bit with Tyrion, because the emotion and the conviction, like him saying, "Oh, I betrayed my best friend and I believed in Daenerys with all my heart." Like, you really feel that, you really believe what he's saying when he's talking about it. And he's practically pleading as rationally as he can with Jon to make the right call. And then him waiting to the very end as Jon's practically out the door to play the sister card. That felt very organic to me, just to be like, I have to make him hear me before he walks out that door, because if he does, it may very well all be over. So, I really appreciated that. I thought his delivery on this was fucking fantastic. And yeah, it definitely seemed to finally get through to Jon. So there you go.
Yeah. All right. So then we see Jon walking. We're not even really sure where he's walking, honestly. Like, it was really unclear. We just see him walking towards what looks like a castle, maybe. I don't know. And Drogon kind of unveils because he was covered in snow, so he just kind of looked like rubble almost buried in snow. But he stands up and kind of shakes the snow off. And it looked like he might have been sleeping, but it ends up not really mattering anyway, because Jon's just able to walk past him. And it turns out he was walking towards Daenerys, because we see Daenerys, who finally does see the Iron Throne, and she approaches it. And unlike her vision from the House of the Undying, she actually does touch the Iron Throne. Because in that vision, she never touches it, which is kind of like, everyone's like, oh, she never touches it, which means that she's never going to be queen, which, like, turns out eventually ends up being true. And it also is interesting because people see snow and they're just like, oh, I wonder if that means Jon Snow is going to be the king. That didn't turn out to be true either, though. But yeah, so she does touch the throne and then turns around to see Jon standing there. And she starts telling him this story of how, oh, I've always imagined the Iron Throne would be so much bigger, because when I was young, they told me that it was made from the swords of 1,000 dead soldiers. And she was like, oh, imagine a little girl that can't even count to 20 trying to imagine what 1,000 is. And she's telling this like cute little whimsical story. And Jon's just like, are you fucking, like, you realize I just got back from seeing soldiers slaughtered in the streets and dead kids laying in ash, right? And talking about, and she's like, oh, we can't hide behind small mercy, because he's like, you can forgive Tyrion, right? She's just like, no, I can't. He's just like, you can forgive him and you can forgive everyone, really. And you can show them they made a mistake and teach them how good you are. And she's just like, oh, we can't hide behind small mercies. The world we need won't be built by men loyal to the world we have. And then Jon just says, the world we need is a world of mercy. And she says, and it will be. I know it's hard for you to imagine something that you've never experienced or seen before, but we are building a good world. And Jon is just like, how do you know that the world will be good? And she says, because I know what's good. And so do you. And then he's like, no, I don't think I do. And she insists. She's like, no, you totally do. Build it with me. Stay here. Let's be together. And he says, well, what about everyone else? What about all the other people who think they know what's good? And this is the big line, I think, that Jon immediately, like, as soon as upon hearing this line, I think Jon was like, okay, well, this bitch needs to die. Daenerys says, they don't get to choose.
Yeah. And then, they lock lips. And
well, she says, be with me, build this new world with me. I want to break the wheel together. And then he tells her, you're my queen now and always. And that was like his final words to her, because then, like you said, yeah, they lock lips, they make out, and he stabs her in the heart.
A lot to unpack here. First of all, great interaction between Daenerys and Jon, just like on an emotional level and this and that, because I think Jon's looking for any semblance of proof, right, that she's going to be okay, that this can work. Like, he wants it to work. He desperately needs it to work. So he's like having it out with her, and she's clearly not budging because it's like, oh, we do know the way, we do, and we're gonna bring it to everybody else, and it's gonna be great, it's gonna be awesome. And he's just like, no, I don't see it. And honestly, dude, I don't know. Like, let me ask you something, man. You feel like the Daenerys character kind of got suckered here? Because, like, I almost feel like, because think about it. He's been so resistant to kiss her for the longest time when they're talking about their relationship and his claim to the Iron Throne and whatever. I don't know. To me, like, maybe I assume that these characters were, like, too intelligent or more intelligent than they actually were. But here this guy is rebuking your advances. Here this guy is being openly argumentative with you, which your character now, like, hates with a passion, because you want obedience and you want people to toe the line. You're not finding it a bit hard. But then again, I guess it goes back to that moral, right? Like, love overrules reason. And she never stopped loving Jon. And I guess that just overruled her rationality to see, like, that this was a trap. So I don't know. Maybe they put that moral in place to kind of get ahead of the rest of the decisions they would make in this. Yeah. But yeah, I was kind of like, I don't know. You went through all that brutality, all that bloodshed, and you fall to pretty much a kiss of death because then you were arranged to be shanked. And yeah, I almost, part of me almost would have preferred it, honestly, if the tables were turned and it was Jon that was shanked, because Daenerys just was like paranoid, and then Arya kills her, personally. But this is the route they went with. And I will say it led to a very emotional follow-up moment, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I just couldn't help but think, like, the Daenerys character kind of looking a little weak for this after everything she's went through. And, again, honestly, I almost wonder if it would have been better if the deaths were flipped. Like, if Daenerys died from the rumble that she created from massacring people, and Cersei died with the stomach shank. I almost wonder, like, if that would work better narratively. But yeah, like I
mean, yeah, like the Cersei thing, I definitely would have preferred her actually being killed by someone rather than just, oh no, the ceiling.
Yeah.
Can we seriously just like I think that's got, like, I honestly think that Cersei's death among, like, which is, it's kind of tied into Jaime's character being completely fucked, might be the one, like, the most frustrating thing to me about this entire series, because they've literally been building her as this, like, mega bitch supervillain since episode 1, and she gets a happy ending.
Yeah.
I really in the arms of the man she loves.
And Daenerys more or less gets the same fate, but, like, that love was a betrayal, not a love of comfort. Like,
yeah.
Jon stuck the knife in her, and Cersei just gets to be comforted by Jaime, even after she sent Bronn to kill both Jaime and Tyrion. Like,
yeah.
God, dude, so much of it, like, makes me angry, because the more stuff they add, the more stuff I think, like, oh, well, you could have flipped this with this, or you could have done this with this. It's wrestling all over again.
It is. It's so disappointing. Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've got to really say about this interaction. Again, very passionate, very emotional.
And then, I mean, speaking of passion and emotion, Drogon has some kind of mental link, I think, with Daenerys, because when Jon stabs her, we hear Drogon kind of crying out, kind of roaring, kind of whining. And then we see him kind of get up and fly, and he flies into the room with Jon and Daenerys, and he kind of creeps up, or, like, slinks up to Daenerys and kind of nudges her dead body. It's like a fucking Lion King moment with, with Simba trying to be like Mufasa, like, oh, daddy, except it's mommy. Because, Daenerys was Drogon's mother. That's the whole situation there that they've been explaining for a while now. And when Drogon realizes that Daenerys is dead, he growls at Jon. Like, he bares his teeth at Jon and he growls, and it looks like he's about to kill Jon, but instead he legitimately melts the Iron Throne. Like, he fire dragon breath, destroys the wall behind the throne itself, but in the process melts the actual throne into molten metal.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, man, I really dug this scene. Like, when Drogon was kind of nudging Daenerys with his nose, I actually got emotional, because he was like mom, and it hit me like fucking hard. him burning.
Oh, sure, that hits you, but you laugh when Mufasa dies.
Because that was funny. But yeah, like Drogon melting the Iron Throne. Here's the thing, and here's where I will kind of call out the fan base a bit for being a bit too nitpicky, at least for me. A lot of people got on that because they said like, oh, the symbolism or whatever they were trying to convey, it's like hitting you in the head with a hammer. I thought it made for a really fucking cool visual, and like one of the most emotional scenes in this fucking finale came from a goddamn dragon. Like,
yeah,
that's impressive as hell. So yeah, I dug everything about this. Once again, Jon gets off scot-free because I thought he was going to be like immolated by the dragon and the fiery breath, but no, the Iron Throne gets the melt. And then I like how the dragon takes Daenerys, the mother, into like its feet and just kind of flies away wherever, I guess, to give her a proper burial. So I thought that.
I don't think the dragon's going to actually bury her body, but I'm guessing he's going back to the home of dragons and also like the ancestral home of the Targaryens, Old Valyria.
Yeah. So that at least was a pretty cool way to send Daenerys off, since obviously she couldn't rule.
Yeah.
And yeah, this whole sequence, this whole scene, to me was the high point of the episode. I really, really enjoyed this. If there's anything else you want to add, you can, but I've said all I want to say about it.
No, yeah, this was a great scene, and I agree with you that this is one of the more emotional moments of the episode, and the fact that you could have something like that from in is really impressive. So yeah, very cool. We can move on though, and after this, it's really interesting what happens, because this is really like, this was kind of the point in the episode. Really, as soon as Daenerys was killed, I feel like the episode took a turn for the better. Like that moment in and of itself was like, yes, finally Jon is making the right decision. And then that just like, it's like it snowballed positively. Like it was falling in a good way, because like then we got the really cool dragon moment that I liked. And then we see Tyrion in his cell, his beard's got a little more growth to it, and he gets pulled out by Grey Worm and his soldiers, and they take them to the dragon's pit, which, you're assuming like, okay, what is going on here? Like, first of all, I'm surprised they didn't kill Tyrion. I know he was their prisoner, but without Dany to be like, oh, we have to give him a fair trial, like, what's stopping Grey Worm and his soldiers from doing whatever the hell they want? That's my thing. But
yeah,
regardless, bring Tyrion to the dragon's pit, and there's like a whole bunch of people. It's like all the top ranking lords of Westeros. You've got Bronze Yohn Royce. You've got the 3 remaining Stark people, Arya, Bran, and Sansa. You've got, Gendry was there. You've got Brienne was there. Fucking Edmure Tully was there. Samwell was there. It was a pretty stacked roster of personalities on this sort of council. And Grey Worm brings Tyrion to be basically tried. This is like Tyrion's trial almost. And Grey Worm like really, really wants to kill this dude. Like he and Unsullied brothers are really pissed, and especially at Jon too. Like he just like a slap on the wrist is not going to be good enough for him or the Unsullied to be happy. And there's like this whole conversation to be had about like what Jon and or Tyrion's punishment should be, and it's really interesting. I really enjoyed this scene actually.
Yeah, no, it was good for Grey Worm. Like he knew what he wanted, he knew what the Unsullied wanted, but I feel like the Unsullied, they're not really a group of people like for politics and stuff. Like they're more about fighting and conquest, and so like that justice is like, well, we want to kill him, and then the more formal administration, the more formal establishment is like, no, there's a better course of action to take. We don't want to do that. And yeah, it really kind of showed like you could sense a changing of the guard was about to happen, but it wasn't going to happen quietly, because Grey Worm, between losing Miss Sunday and even I think really putting together before Daenerys, like I'm pretty sure if it was his call, Jon would have died like an episode or 2 ago. And, really wanting to get that pound of flesh, it was really like a nice way to build tension and kind of see now that there are no more antagonists, which I will say now that Daenerys is dead, I just want to say one other thing. I think another weakness of the show to me, just on the whole, was how the antagonists, like their resolutions. I feel like Night King died way too easy. We already talked about Cersei's death. And Daenerys is probably the best one, but even so, I don't know if you could have really improved on that or not. But yeah, now the antagonism is what comes after. Like, how do we live together? How is order restored? And you can definitely see that antagonism on full display between Grey Worm and the Unsullied's desires and the desire of this gathering of very powerful and influential people here.
Yeah.
So, good shit.
Yeah, and you know, it's one of those things where Grey Worm is just like, oh, you don't have the power to make the decision, and they end up arriving at the conclusion that, oh, we need to elect a king, and fucking Edmure Tully gets up like he's gonna try and be the king, and Sansa's just like, Uncle, sit down, please. That was a really cool moment. And it kind of comes back to Tyrion, and even though Tyrion's the prisoner here, he still ends up basically electing the king, because he basically goes on this long, amazing speech about, and by the way, before we even get to that, we do also have to address Samwell being like, oh, well, if the king rules over all the people, then the person that decides who the king is should be everyone, and then everyone laughs at him. So democracy shot down.
Yeah, immediately. That was the best part of the episode to me. Samwell was many centuries before his time, my good friend.
Yeah. But yeah, so then Tyrion gets to go on this long speech, and it eventually does land on him saying that Brandon the Broken should be the king. Bran Stark, basically. And he basically says, like, I know you don't want it, but that's almost like why you should be the king. And then he was like, would you accept it? And Bran was just like, why do you think I came all this way? Bran, you clever son of a bitch.
Yeah, you know what you were doing, Bran. Jesus Christ. Listen, dude, I have to excuse myself, but you keep talking, and I'll just retro, like, I'll catch up. You just keep reviewing this.
Yep, no problem, man. All right, so essentially we get Bran kind of suggested as a potential king. Tyrion is the one that suggests it, and he says, all for Brandon the Broken, king of the Seven Kingdoms, say I. And Tyrion says I. And then we kind of go around in a circle. We start, first person to say I initially after Tyrion was Samwell. Then I think Edmure. Then I think like Bronzeyon. And then it just went in a circle. Like everyone said I until we got to Sansa. And Sansa initially just turned to Bran and said, listen, I know that you understand this more than anyone here because you're also a Stark. The North is not going to be willing to accept bending the knee ever again. And it ends up legitimately kind of just arriving at like a peaceful conclusion that, like, okay, fine, the North is now its own kingdom. Sansa, you'll be the queen. I know they're in good hands with you. And now you can also kind of be known as the queen who earned or won or negotiated, or however you want to put it, the independence of the North back. Because there was, back in the day, there was the king who knelt. The Stark king who knelt, who surrendered the North as a kingdom to, I forget who the Targaryen king was at the time, but to the king of Westeros, and made it the Seven Kingdoms. But now Sansa is the person who has officially seceded from the Seven Kingdoms. It's now only the Six Kingdoms, and because of Sansa now, the North is its own kingdom. They have their own independent ruler who will be Sansa for now. And we also get the point made like, oh, Bran can't have kids. And Tyrion says, good. The children of kings are often very cruel. And it's good to know that nobody here and nobody's kids here are ever going to be harassed by the son of Brandon, because he can't have kids. So it's not necessarily fully democratic, but we do kind of arrive at the conclusion that we'll gather this same council of all of the high lords in Westeros to determine the next king once Bran is out of the picture in however many years, because Bran is a younger kid. He's probably like, 17, 18 at the point that he becomes king here. So he's probably got a good chunk of time to serve as king, to reign as king here. So it's, and then when he finally does, die or pass on the Three-Eyed Raven mantle to whoever he chooses as his next of kin, I guess, that will be when a new council is formed to determine who the next king of the Six Kingdoms and protector of the realm will be. So that whole situation is kind of handled well. And then Bran basically says, like, Tyrion, you are going to be my hand. And Tyrion doesn't want to do it. And he says, I don't want it. And Bran says, well, I don't want to be king either. So I guess we're even. And he basically says, like, Grey Worm is talking about, like, oh, he needs to pay for his betrayal. And Bran said he is. By becoming the hand of the king, he's going to spend the rest of his life fixing what he helped to ruin, what he helped to kind of break in a way. So that's Tyrion's quote unquote punishment. Is like, it's like, it ends up being like a two-layered thing. It's like, first of all, you're the hand of the king, and there's this whole saying like, oh, the king shits and the hand wipes. So the hand of the king basically gets to be the problem solver for the king. The hand of the king gets to handle all the king's bullshit. And the hand of the king also kind of deals with a lot of like petty issues that the king doesn't want to be bothered with. So there's that whole thing. And then the second layer, which we find out later on, is that Tyrion's basically been written out of history. Like, they're not acknowledging any of his sort of successes, any of his accomplishments. He's not actually being acknowledged at all. And I'm sure that's absolutely devastating to him. But it's also like, dude, you like betrayed your queen. You thought you were going to die, and now you're still alive, and you're still doing what you love to do. Like, you've even said, like, I can't leave. I love the game too much. And you're like in the thick of this game. So I think Tyrion is, even though he's got to be devastated by the whole being written out of history thing, and of course, you know, being forced to be the hand of the king for the rest of his life, it's still like it's almost like you're still being able to kind of do what you've said multiple times you love for the rest of your life. So how bad of a punishment really is that? So Bran is your new king. And then we see Brienne writing down the accomplishments of Jaime Lannister. And we don't see all of them, but we do see that, you know, it says about how he lost his hand escorting her or being escorted, or however it was, to safety. And we see, you know, and then at the end it says died protecting his queen. So even though I'm sure Brienne is heartbroken that Jaime left her, that's her being willing to kind of put those feelings to the side and acknowledge how much progress and how many great things Jaime did before his death. So all kinds of emotional moments here. This one really kind of got to me personally. I thought this was a really, really well done scene. And it was also like something that I feel like we needed, because there was that dangling thread of that book of all these knights' accomplishments that Joffrey made fun of Jaime about. Oh, somebody forgot to write down all of your great accomplishments, uncle. And now that wrong has been righted because because Brienne has gone in and fixed it. She's added in all of his accomplishments. And then we get to what seems like the small council. We see Tyrion kind of pulling up a chair, and then he sees that all the other chairs are out of whack. And he gets up and he goes around and he lines them up so that they're all nice and parallel, and they're all lined up and they're all even. And then Bronn and I wish John was here because he might be able to help me, but I forget who else. I think probably Sam. I think it was Bronn and Sam show up, and we have, or it might not have been. Oh no, it was Davos. It was Bronn and Davos show up, and we have just kind of a fun little discussion between the two of them and Tyrion, and then Brienne and Samwell also show up, and then Bran gets wheeled in by Podrick, and it's just like a small council. Like, he even says, like, oh, we need a master of coin, we need a master of ships, etc., etc. And it turns out Bronn ends up being the master of coin, which is amazing because he's the fucking High Lord of Highgarden, and Highgarden is like known as the richest area in the Seven Kingdoms. So I love that. And yeah, I just thought that this was a really cool scene, and I really enjoyed this particular part because it was like, okay, things are kind of back to business as usual. This kind of reminds me of like the very early episodes in season 1 when we would have the small council with Ned and Littlefinger and Varys. That whole and I think that maybe even I think Bronze Jan Royce might have even been on the small council early on, and like the father or the grandfather of the Tyrells, I forget what his name was, but I'm pretty sure he was a part of that as well. And it's like, yeah, we're back to business as usual. The wars are over. There are no wars left. Bran kind of talks about, like, we need to be able to feed all these people, and then we see them getting into like an argument, like a debate about where to use all of Bronn's money, since he's the master of coin now. And Bronn wants to put together all these brothels that have been destroyed. Brienne is just like, "Oh, I think we can all agree that ships are more important than brothels." And Bronn's just like, I don't necessarily think that that's a true fact. So it was a really fun scene. I really enjoyed this. And then we get to see kind of what happens with Jon. And it's kind of revealed like Jon is being forced to take the black again and go up to the Night's Watch. It's one of those things where Grey Worm and the Unsullied were not willing to accept him getting off scot-free, but then obviously, Sansa and Bran and Arya would be unwilling to have him executed. So the only compromise that they were able to arrive at was sending him up to the Night's Watch, take no children, or take no wives, father no children, basically just kind of reducing him to what he was again at the beginning of the season. It feels like almost like a reset for his character, only like he actually has friends up there now, which is cool, and we would see that later. We see, and then an interesting thing too to me is that we do see Grey Worm and the Unsullied, and Grey Worm says like we sail for Noth. So I guess that they are going to be sailing south because Grey Worm wants to kind of hold up what he said he wanted to do with Missandei and go to Noth. So he's heading to Noth, and I'm sorry, but if Grey Worm and the Unsullied are the only reasons that Jon had to take the black, then if they're fucking leaving, give it a few months to make sure they're gone and let him come back home, man. Like, I don't understand why we're going to try and act like Jon Snow is being like kept in the Night's Watch, kept, up north protecting the wall when there's nothing to like. The wildlings are cool now. Like, they're not a threat anymore. The Night King is dead, and therefore all the White Walkers are gone. What does the wall need protection from exactly? I don't really understand that. So, if I'm Sansa or Arya or anyone, I mean, obviously Arya won't be around because we saw she was kind of on a ship. She had her own crew. She was sailing west of Westeros. I want that series, please. I want to see Arya sailing west of Westeros. I want to follow her on her journey and find out along with her what is west of Westeros. I'm very curious about that. But regardless, if I'm Sansa, why the hell would you just let Jon rot up on the wall when there's no need for anyone up there anymore? And the Unsullied aren't going to be around to be like, "Oh, hey, Jon Snow, you were supposed to be on the wall. You're going to die now." The Unsullied went down to Noth. They're going into fucking Sithorios. Like, they're not even around. Who cares? Bring him back. Like, that was just another like really weird thing to me. So then we do end up seeing Jon entering the Night's Watch again. He makes eye contact with Tormund, and then he and Tormund and a whole bunch of other free folk ride north of the wall. And honestly, it wasn't really like a conclusive "this is definitely what happened" thing, but I hope that means that Jon is going to live with them and among the free folk and just fuck off the wall. He doesn't need to be a member of the Night's Watch. He's done it already. His watch has ended. He literally died on fucking duty. He died as a member of the Night's Watch. So his watch is over. So as far as I'm concerned, I hope he went north to find another wildling cutie to shack up with like fucking Ygritte, and he's going to live the rest of his days happy north of the wall with his wildling buddies, with Tormund and everyone else that he made friends with along the way. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's where Jon just went. So that's I think that's about it. Actually, we do see Sansa entering the meeting room at Winterfell, the same meeting room that we had the big feast, or it might have even been the hall, like the Great Hall in Winterfell. We see all these men around her bowing down to her, and then when she sits, we hear the Queen of the North, Queen of the North. They start chanting. It was a really cool moment. So just to kind of sum things up, every Stark who made it to the finale got a very happy ending, because Bran, as the Three-Eyed Raven, is the king of the Six Kingdoms. Sansa is the queen of Winterfell in the north. Jon effectively got to ride off with his wildling pals and is going to live the rest of his life free. And Arya got to explore and go west of Westeros, which is like a goal and like a dream that she's had for years now. So in a way, all four of the remaining Stark children, and we've got to remember the only Stark children who actually died were Robb early on and Rickon in season 6. So a majority of the Stark kids survived, and every single one of the ones that survived, you could argue, had a very happy ending. So kind of an interesting 180 there from the Starks spending most of the series getting absolutely shit on. But I almost wonder, because if we go back, I want to say it was like season 4 when, or it might have even been season 3, when Ramsay was torturing Theon. And he said, if you think this is going to have a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. That almost felt like a wink to the viewers. But at the end of the day, it kind of was a happy ending, unless you're like a hardcore Daenerys fan and you don't like anyone else. Like if the only person that you were really rooting to win was Daenerys, it wasn't a happy ending. But if you had like a legitimate connection with any other characters, and especially if you had a legitimate connection with more than one other character outside of Daenerys, they probably had a happy ending. Because like Davos had a happy ending, Bronn had a happy ending. I don't agree with it, but in his point of view, Jaime had a happy ending. He died in the arms of the woman he loved, which is what he said he wanted to do. So, you know, all four of the remaining Stark children had happy endings. Bran, Sansa, Arya, Jon. Tyrion had about as happy of an ending as we could have expected. I mean, I personally thought Tyrion would become the king, but Hand of the King is pretty damn close. And obviously, if something does happen to Bran, then Tyrion would become like the sort of the interim king of the Six Kingdoms. So yeah, like there were a lot of happy endings, and that almost makes you wonder if that like wink from Ramsay Bolton was more regarding like himself and Theon, because obviously Ramsay didn't have a happy ending, and Theon, I mean, even Theon, like obviously he got killed by the Night King, but he did it defending someone as a way to make up for being awful to that same person earlier on the series. Like it's not like Theon died like the way Ramsay did, you know, like Theon didn't die after having been a piece of shit for years and eaten by his own dogs because he didn't feed them for weeks. Like that's not the kind of miserable death that Theon had. Theon died trying to defend the man who would go on to become the king of the Six Kingdoms. So I don't think you could say that Theon had anything but a relatively happy ending as well. So maybe Ramsay was just talking about himself. Maybe Ramsay's saying, oh, if you think this is going to have a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. Maybe that was more a reference to the Ramsay Bolton character, because he certainly did not have a happy ending.
What conversation am I dropping in on here?
Well, I'm kind of wrapping it up, actually. But basically, I talked about the little council that they had, elected Bran king. Bran made Tyrion his hand, and you know, basically that was his punishment, because he was going to have to spend the rest of his life fixing the shit that he messed up or contributed to fucking up beforehand. Talked about the small council with Tyrion fixing all the little chairs, and then Bronn and Davos come in and pull them up anyway. And then we see Sam and Brienne come in, and then Bran gets wheeled in by Pod. And that whole situation with them talking about, oh, I think we should rebuild the brothels. And then Brienne's just like, oh, I think ships are more important than brothels. And Bronn's just like, I don't know if we all agree on that. That was a cool little scene there. And
yeah.
All of the Starks that are left getting happy endings, because like they make it seem like Jon gets taken to the Night's Watch, but then he rides off north with the wildlings. So like I feel like he's gonna like do what he did before. He's gonna go north. He's gonna live among the free folk. He's gonna find another wildling cutie like Ygritte to live with, to shack up with, and like that's Jon's happy ending right there. Sansa's the queen of the north. Arya is sailing west of Westeros. Bran is the king of the Six Kingdoms. Sansa gets to go down as the queen who earned the North's independence back, which is huge. So like I'm basically talking about happy endings now, because like all the Starks got happy endings. Davos, Bronn, arguably Theon, since he died defending the future king of Westeros. Like there are a lot of people that had happy endings. Even Jaime and Cersei had happy endings because they both died in the arms of the person they loved. So there was lot of happy endings. And then I brought it back to Ramsey in like season 3 or 4, talking about, oh, if you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. But you were fucking wrong, Ramsey, unless he was talking about himself, because he obviously didn't have a happy ending.
Yeah, he also didn't anticipate dogs eating his face.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe fuck off, Bolton. But yeah, that all seems legit to me, man. I mean, Braun as king was an interesting choice. Bran is king. Not operating at 100% here, folks. I apologize. But Bran as king is an interesting choice. I remember saying to the family, like, I really wish we could have known in like no uncertain terms what the fuck the three-eyed raven is. And I think people wanted to see like Bran do more with that power, or just do more as he is. I know a lot of complaints were like he just kind of snuck into that title. And again, that little line, like, why'd you think I came all this way? So like he already knew what was going down. And yeah, but I mean, it really does make him, as I said to my family earlier, kind of the perfect ruler, because if you already know like the outcomes of like all events, and you can see that, you know what wars are calculable risks, you know what's just a needless loss of life, you know what partnerships to have, what partnerships not to have, because you're seeing all futures, you know, you're seeing like all of it. So very interesting choice for a king, and at the very least like a king's advisor, if he wasn't the king, but he is. Tyrion's punishment was clever. I like too that like Tyrion in the earlier seasons, like he even said to Shay why they wouldn't leave together. He loves playing the game.
I said that same thing too.
Yeah, and now that the game's won, like it's no fun anymore, especially because he didn't necessarily get to win on his terms, because he didn't want Bran's hand. So just an interesting little wrap up of the arc there. And as far as the Starks, I'm really happy to see them get all happy endings. Like they were the ones most marred in tragedy. It almost did feel like Game of Thrones was their story, if we're just going by houses and lords and ladies. Like,
yeah, like if there was a protagonist of Game of Thrones, it was the Stark family.
Exactly. So to see them come out on top, it's really fucking cool, man. So I will say, did they put a nice bow on it? Absolutely. Was the gift always the best wrapped? Could have been better. But on the whole, I won't hate on this too much. I mean, there are far worse series finales in television history to me. And
Dexter.
Yeah, Dexter immediately comes to mind. So the Starks getting a nice happy ending, bruh, I'm cool with it. So, and you already probably gave like.
Are you with me though that you want a new series following Arya on her?
Oh, absolutely.
Winterfell.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God, yeah. I want her to regain that adventurous and murderous spirit. So I definitely think some monsters would do that. But yeah,
and especially if they could keep Maisie Williams on as the actress.
Yes, absolutely. I mean that's crucial. She is Arya Stark as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I feel like you probably did like all the deep dives and everything. So I'm not going to redress all that, because people shouldn't have to suffer because I was absent. But yeah, on the whole, like I said, give this finale. I give the first half probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 out of 10. Yeah, maybe 6 out of 10. This though, I would grade higher, like 8, 9. I really did enjoy the second half.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff. And yeah, that's all I got to say, man. So I guess I'll leave it to you to take us home.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do hope that you enjoyed this discussion and review. And I guess that's it for our Game of Thrones coverage. We're not going to be putting out any more videos regarding Game of Thrones. So we hope that you've enjoyed our coverage of season 8. If you did like the video, of course, you can subscribe. But we are primarily a wrestling channel, pro wrestling. That's, WWE, New Japan, NXT, all that stuff. So if you're not interested in that stuff, no use subscribing. Don't even bother. You're just going to be disappointed, I promise. But if you are a wrestling fan, subscribe, click the bell icon so you get notified when we go live. Follow us on Twitter, like our Facebook. And if you stick around long enough to enjoy what we do and have interest in supporting us, you've got a few ways to do that. You can buy our merch on Teespring, you can donate to our Patreon, or you can just share this video and this channel with all your wrestling fan friends and let them in on the best kept secret in the YouTube wrestling community. We are TwitWow, and we're the workhorses of the YWC. And we will see you all, I don't know, maybe later on for Twitch. We might do a Twitch stream, Rocket League, talking about Raw as it's on the air in 25 minutes. We might not. I don't know. We haven't decided. But regardless, we do have BOSJ live reactions tomorrow to days 5 and 6, as well as SmackDown. And then day 7 of BOSJ on Wednesday, and then 8 on Friday, and then 9. There's a lot of BOSJ coming at your faces. So stick around for that tomorrow, and we will see you then. But in order for you to be there, you're going to have to remember to stay tuned.